Greetings, salutations, and welcome to Sportslook, the sports television program for the high plains of West Texas and eastern New Mexico. I'm your host, Doc Elder, and after a 2-week layoff, we will start anew with a new set of faces. We're going to have Brandon Mizuraka, the head coach of Greyhound men's soccer. We're going to have Cam Brennan. He's the acting sports information director. I'll finish up with an overtime, but as always, I'll start out with an Eastern recap. Some really good showings by the Greyhound track and field squads at their first outdoor meet last weekend at West Texas. For the Greyhound ladies, the best finish was Tamia Smith. She finished second in the shot put. And for the Greyhound guys, Dan Huron, whose dad, interestingly enough, is the dean of the College of Education here at Eastern New Mexico University. He finished second in the 800. For Greyhound softball, they lost a doubleheader to Texas A&M Kingsville, but then on Sunday they split a doubleheader with highly regarded Texas A&M International, and the split is what the Greyhound baseball team got as they won their first two games against the University of Arkansas Fort Smith before losing the last two games. Well, that has been an Eastern recap, so we'll clear the set and I'll bring in my first guest, Brandon Mizuraka, right now. Welcome back to Sportslook, and a privilege to bring to the set of Sportslook for the very first time the head coach of Greyhound men's soccer, Brandon Mizuraka. And Coach, welcome to Sportslook.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Coach, the first question, where are you from and what was the process that got you to Eastern New Mexico?
Yeah, originally from St. Louis, Missouri. Grew up there my entire life. Go Cardinals. But no, been all over the world. Was down in Texas, out in Oklahoma, and now here in New Mexico. So enjoying the South.
And a lot of people may not know this unless they are fans of soccer, but St. Louis was the hotbed of soccer in the United States even before it became a national phenomenon.
Yes, yes, and luckily we just got a MLS team in the state, so we're really looking forward to, and really exciting times.
Brandon, was soccer always your sport, or did you play numerous sports and gradually gravitate?
Yeah, I grew up. I mean, in St. Louis, you grow up from the time you're like 3, 4, playing soccer. Played hockey as well, which is probably my one passion that outside of the game I still enjoy. But no, I mean, soccer has always been a part of my life.
And what position did you play?
Yeah, funny enough, I was actually a goalkeeper until I realized I wasn't going to grow anymore. So then I had to gravitate to the field. So played as a 9 forward, and then you know gradually moved back to become a defender.
And at what point in your life did you decide that you wanted to be a coach?
Yeah, I think I started very early. I started actually coaching when I was 13 years old. At the early days, you're just focusing on getting extra touches, just doing it because you want to enjoy it. I had a younger brother, so I was always going out there helping his coach, set up cones and learn. By the time I was, 15, 16, I kind of knew that this was what I was going to do though for a living.
And so, how did you actually prepare for a career in coaching?
Yeah. First undergrad, I did sport management, and a lot of time was just spending hours on end in my coach's office, probably annoying him a little bit too much sometimes, but it allowed me to just kind of learn and bounce ideas off, and watch as much as you could.
And what was your progression as a coach? I mean, we established the fact you started
Mhm.
coaching,
Yeah.
but when you actually started getting paid for coaching,
Yeah.
where did that take you?
Yeah. Started getting paid, I think, when I was 20 to 21 years old. I was an assistant for the state ODP, so the best players in the state of Missouri. And then from there, that led me to my grad assistant job in Kentucky, and then that kind of spurred everything on from there.
And you are coming most recently from Oklahoma Panhandle State
Mhm.
University. And what was the process that got you the head job there?
Yeah, I think that just, I think I might have been just the one person that was a little crazy to start a program from scratch. Had really good experience at the university prior to that as an assistant, where we had just gotten to the national tournament. So, knowing the level and the standard, I think that it was kind of a, a right fit.
And what was the big adjustment going from being the number 2 to being the number 1?
Yeah, I think a lot of it was just everything that you don't see as an assistant. The pressures of winning, the pressures of balancing budgets, and every little thing kind of falls on you. So I think that was the one thing I learned quite a bit, and it was very fast winded, but ultimately it made the enjoyment of winning that much better.
And who were the big influences? Let's take it from when you were a player, and
Mhm.
we'll also talk about as a coach. Who were the big influences on you growing up to make you the player that you became, and who really helped you become the coach that you've become?
Yeah, I think that a lot of it I attribute to my, actually my high school days going to an all boys, Catholic high school, CBC. I mean, very big into athletics. So that kind of had me, kind of grow up as a young man. As a coach, though, I think that my college coach, Dino Merrick, um, was actually the one that kind of inspired me to kind of push on a little bit further. So.
And what sort of a relationship did you have as an assistant coach? How did that change when you became a head coach?
Yeah, I think that the relationships changed quite a bit, especially where with my former head coaches, talking to them, and sometimes it was a conversation where I would call them and say, "And now I understand what you were going through, why you said no to X, Y, or Z, or things like that." But I think it kind of made our relationship stronger, and those are mentors that I'll have for the rest of my life, that I'll always bounce ideas off of, and work with, and support them just as much as they support me.
For anybody who took a look at your resume, they saw that you had great success last year
Mhm.
with Oklahoma Panhandle State. What what was the reason? Did you have just like one really good player? Did you have a bunch of people that knew their roles, or was it a combination of both?
I think it was a combination of both. I mean, we had some elder, players that had been in the program from its inception. So they'd been with me for 3 years at that point. With that though, I think we also ingrained having, young freshmen that were really hungry and wanted to, push the program forward. So I think just the team chemistry, I think we knew straight away that we would win. Um, I think that, you know, that was the exciting part, was just knowing that we had a good group of boys that, all just wanted to fight and, do the program good.
I'm grossly over exaggerating, but
Mhm.
basically there are two styles to the sport of soccer. One
Mhm.
is kick it, try and outrun the
Mhm.
defense, make sure you're not offsides, but,
Sure.
get a shot on goal. The other one is to position, work it around the perimeter and attack that
Sure.
way. Does it depend on the opponent you're playing, or if you had to say there was one strategy you use more than the other, what is it?
Yeah, I think that, especially in the college game, it is more transition focused. For me, that means of being maybe a little bit more direct in nature. That's my personal philosophy, is you ultimately have to, create goal scoring opportunities. And, if you waste time in possession, sometimes you're not going to have as many opportunities. So for me, I keep it simple. We try to go play as fast as possible, go as quick as possible forward, and try to score as many goals as possible. So.
Obviously, what you'd like is you'd like the fastest
Mhm.
players, the strongest kickers, people who have their head screwed on
Mhm.
right. But if you had to say there's one thing in particular you look for in a player, what attribute has to be at the top of the list?
Yeah, I think that their IQ of the game and understanding of the tactical principles in play. We have set principles that we expect, and so for our student athletes that we are going to have here, it's having players that can actually take a concept and actually put it into practice.
What was it about the position at Eastern that intrigued you enough to apply for the head position here?
Yeah, I think that watching what John had done previously, and the successes and what they were building here, it was the first thing. I think that also the competition inside the Lone Star is something that you can't deny is good. So this is a good opportunity to put Eastern back on the map, and that's something I'm really looking forward to.
And what was the interview process like when you came here?
It was quick. It was quick. I think, it was within a day I had heard from Dr. Weir and, setting up the initial interview, meeting with, Mike Molina, and a couple other coaches. And, ultimately the process was very quick. I mean, which is something I was, happy to, see is that they were committed to bringing someone in, giving the best possible opportunity to succeed straight away.
I was just going to ask you what your initial impression was of Dr. Word, but it sounds like,
Go getter.
yeah, yep,
Go getter.
absolutely. And it seems like you are as well.
Yeah. I try to be. I try to be.
Of course, the one thing that will be different is that you may have had a chance to meet our university president, but
Mhm.
Patrice Caldwell has announced her retirement. So a little bit of uncertainty about the leadership. But I think if you met Dr. Caldwell, you recognize she's a
Sure.
quality person.
Yes. Exactly.
Well, unlike most coaches who come in and inherit a squad, because we had put men's soccer on hiatus, you get a clean slate. And so basically, everybody that's going to be playing for you is somebody that you want to have play for you.
Exactly, exactly, and we're really looking forward to that and bringing in, I think, the right student athletes, not just the best student athletes, but the ones that are gonna fit, the program in this community.
I I honestly should have researched this question. I'm a poor excuse for a sports guy, but I honestly don't know. Will we be able to jump back into the Lone Star Conference as a full-fledged member in the fall, or do we have to use a hockey term, do we have to sit in the penalty box for a year?
Yeah, I think we're still waiting to, get official word on that. I know that, Dr. Weir had been speaking to the conference on that, so over the next couple of days, I think we'll know a little bit more on that.
Obviously, if you had come here from, let's say, Rhode Island, you'd have a real adjustment because the wind never blows as strong in Rhode Island as it
Sure.
does. But it seems like if you played in Goodwell, Oklahoma, Portales isn't going to be that much of a surprise.
No, no, I think that, I feel at home here and, I mean, just the other day it was blowing, pretty hard, but, that's just what we're used to. Make sure that, you're tactically seeing what's going on with the wind changes and, making sure that you plan ahead.
And I was just going to ask you if you have your druthers, would you rather have the first half with the wind at your back, or would you rather go into the wind
You know,
and
I would much rather go into the wind, first half. So it allows you first half typically, you know, both teams are still feeling each other out. So going into the second half, now you have a little bit of an advantage.
And with the players that you are in the process of recruiting
Mhm.
right now, if there's one thing you hope when people come to watch you play soccer next fall, if there's one thing you hope they walk away saying about your kids, what's the one thing you hope they say about Greyhound soccer?
Yeah, I think first and foremost that they're good teammates, but more importantly than that as well is, you know, players that are going to work hard for 90 minutes.
Well, Brandon, like I said, your record speaks for itself. You have had a proven success record coming here. Wish the best of luck recruiting and can't wait to see your product in action next fall.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, that is going to wrap up our first interview segment. So, what we'll do is we'll clear the set and we'll bring in our second guest right now. Welcome back to Sportslook. And we bring to the set of Sportslook for the very first time the acting sports information director at Eastern New Mexico University, Cam Brennan. And Cam, welcome to Sportslook.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Doc. I really appreciate you letting me join you.
Well, Cam, first question, where are you from and what was the process that got you to Eastern?
Yeah, so I'm from Warwick, Rhode Island, so I've come a long way to Portales from the East Coast. And what drew me here was I had a previous work partner that we worked together at another school on the East Coast, and then they ended up getting hired here, and then I ended up following after they needed an assistant for sports information, and I followed suit, and I came in June.
What was your connection with sports growing up?
Yeah, so sports growing up, I always enjoyed playing sports, watching sports, and just having that individual sensationalized spectator aspect towards sports. So sports was always on the mindset growing up, whether it be from being out there and playing in youth or just watching them as a fan.
And speaking of being a fan, you had a good area to grow up because there are few successful teams that play in New England.
Yeah, exactly. I was lucky enough to witness one championship for each team in just my first 20 years of being on this earth. And being in Boston, you get the Patriots, you get the Bruins, the Celtics, the Red Sox, and the New England Revolution, who have been doing pretty well successfully.
I hate to put you on the spot, but if you had to say there was one particular sport that you really followed the most passionately, which sport would it be?
I know currently and most passionately is maybe soccer, but I am a diehard Patriots fan too. So knowing the ins and outs of the organization and who's going to be on that 53-man roster is always something to keep my eye on.
And I think I know the answer, but you may surprise me. If you had to pick out a particular Patriot that was your favorite player, who is your favorite Patriot?
Yeah, I know. I think the simple answer is Tom Brady, as my entire memory of the Patriots was him as well, and I'm happy of what he achieved and what he's continued to achieve. But there's some scrappy players that I really enjoyed. Wes Welker, Julian Edelman were a couple players that I really enjoyed watching growing up.
And of course, Wes played his college football about 95 miles away from here.
Yeah, he went and got a degree at Texas Tech and was able to be one of their standout receivers for the Red Raider program.
Cam, at what point in your life did you decide that sports was what you wanted to do for a living?
Yeah, I would definitely say going in maybe junior year of high school, we had a what was called a sports network club where we basically covered the high school teams from a statistical and a broadcasting standpoint. So we took stats and we basically did live play-by-play coverage for and video streams of our teams, and that was really my first introduction to that whole process. And I really enjoyed covering the sports, even though I wasn't associated as maybe a team manager or as a member of the team. I was still part of the structure of the sports itself. And that's something I really enjoyed.
Sounds like you went to a very progressive high school.
Yeah, exactly. They gave me the opportunities that I wouldn't have necessarily had if I went to different high schools that were in my area.
And what was your association with sports in college?
Yeah, I worked as many games as I can, working with our radio station, doing play by play, and then later taking a role within sports information, helping do stats, helping write articles, and helping just do social media posts with our collegiate teams.
Well, obviously, sports information is a lot different now than it was when I came to Eastern in 1995. Basically, it was just alert TV stations, what the score was, and print up Prescott at the beginning of the season. A little more complicated than that now.
Yeah, it's definitely evolved into the digital age where you have a live statistic that you can track and follow on your phone, live streams which you can follow and track on your phone and tablet and laptops, and configuring everything that goes along with it with pregame and game notes and media guides and previews, recaps, and photos that have to go with the entire sport of a game day and throughout an entire season.
When you went into the sports information director business, what was your best skill? What was the one that you needed to amp up a little bit to get up to speed?
Yeah, I would definitely say my strongest skill would have been in the statistical side, understanding how sports and statistics and what's a foul, what's not a foul, what's a travel, what's a violation, so on and so forth, as an example. That I really understood from my background just watching and growing up around sports for my entire life, basically. And then something I really had to develop was my digital skills, so graphic design, social media, videos for videography, After Effects, Photoshop, Premiere Pro. That's some of the stuff I had to really work on and develop to get to the level where I am now.
And when you came to Eastern New Mexico, I presume that you were familiar with most of the sports. Probably the one sport here might be rodeo that you had to have a little bit of a tutorial.
Yeah, I needed a bit of a quick Google search for rodeo just because not very common in New England. We have maybe the closest thing we have is equestrian, but that's a still whole different ball game compared to what our student athletes do in the rodeo team.
And rodeo is a really good sport. I mean, we have a young lady by the name of Madeline Shower who won her particular event in the first spring rodeo. So, pretty good program to cover.
Yeah, absolutely. And Coach Flynn has them going in the right direction and making sure that they're ready to succeed. And whether it be meets that happen 2 weeks from now or today, they're ready to go whenever.
Kim, what's been your experience here? What is the easiest sport to cover from a sports information director point of view? Which is the toughest one to be an SID for?
Yeah, I think that's a very loaded question from the fact of you can go at it from different ways. Where if you look at cross country and track and field, there's not necessarily a statistical aspect of the sports information, but getting more detailed with your recaps and what records they break, whether they set personal bests or whether they set program records or meet records or facility records, where they stand within the conference and where they stand within the nation. So getting detail there. And then another sport that's very statistically heavy, I would say, is baseball and softball, because there are so many different things and so many quirky rules per se, whether it's an earned run and unearned run, they deserve a little bit more attention from the statistical side.
I'm smiling as you were saying that because we were in the press box for Greyhound baseball on Sunday, and there was a situation where a number of runs scored on a particular play, and you were trying to decide, okay, one run would have scored, so that's an earned run. The other run scored because of an error, and you were the Secretary of the Treasury trying to do an accounting bill.
Yeah, I mean, stuff like that just takes practice and time and understanding, breaking down the individual play itself. So it takes practice. It's not something that you learn overnight. And we still make mistakes. And if mistakes happen, you just go back and fix them. So trying to make the decisions in the moment are important, but knowing to take your time and think through the whole process.
And I would say that probably baseball and softball are kind of unique in that after you've made a decision, the coaches can come to you and ask very politely, would you reconsider that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think baseball and softball is one of the only sports where interpretation is one of the biggest key words. Where basketball, a made basket is a made basket. Where baseball and softball, you can argue for and against whether an error should be scored as a hit or a hit should be scored as an error and who it may or may not belong to. So definitely one of the biggest differences between the other sports within statistics is the interpretation is the big one.
Cam, obviously, for a lot of our sports, there was no 2020, 2021 season. For some, like baseball, there was a season, but within restrictions, like they had to play all their games on the road. So this year, nobody really knew what to expect. And I think you'd have to join me in saying we've been pleasantly surprised at the success some of our teams have had.
Yeah, I would absolutely starting with the spring. Coach Price has his team going in the right direction. This is really his first full season in 2020. His season was cut short in March, and as you mentioned before, 2021 he kind of had a weird season where he couldn't bring guys in for fall practices, and he couldn't bring his team in until late February to start practicing. So they've really gotten off to a great start, and they've made the best of the situation and have been very productive the past 3 weeks so far. And then softball too, where they've gone through a coaching change, and Coach Fiefel has got her team going in the right direction and coming up with some big wins in recent weeks as well.
And in the fall, I would say I knew the Greyhound women's cross country team was going to be good, even though they didn't have a season the year before. Just looking at the players we or the runners we had coming back, but to me, the real surprise was volleyball. I mean, they won their first conference match, lost a whole bunch, and lo and behold, got themselves on the right track again.
Yeah, absolutely. They beat Texas A&M Commerce, which was a big surprise as Commerce was picked to be one of the best teams in the conference. And night one of conference play, they definitely sent a shock. And then, as you mentioned before, as the season went on, they ended up qualifying for the Lone Star Conference tournament, winning in a do or die game on the final day of the season. So it was great to see a team that was initially picked to finish last in the conference ended up making the Lone Star Conference tournament.
And speaking of a group of overachievers, women's basketball, they were predicted to finish kind of last in the conference and Didn't finish last, as a matter of fact. They finished 11th.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a part of that too with the preseason polls, obviously they may not count for what happens on the floor, but a lot of the people that voted, coaches, media personnel, didn't necessarily see the team in 2020 and 2021, so they immediately thought that this was a team that was going to struggle. But Coach De Los Reyes really got the team in shape and was really progressive in getting the team to press these teams that they technically should have lost to, and was only a basket away from moving on to the home conference tournament second round.
Well, Cam, in the minute we've got left, let's give you a chance to do some free advertising. If people want to follow Eastern Athletics, where can they follow Eastern?
Yeah, so Eastern Athletics has basically on all social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, basically at Eastern New Mexico Athletics or Go Eastern Athletics. And follow us for game updates as we continue our spring season, live statistics, and live video. So hope you all can follow the Greyhounds baseball and softball and track and field programs throughout the rest of the spring as we head closer to May.
Cam, it's been a pleasure getting to know you. Thanks for the great job that you've done, and let's hope that we see each other in some postseason venues.
Yeah, thank you so much, Doc. I appreciate it.
All right, well, that is going to wrap up the interview segment of Sportslook. So what we'll do is we'll clear the set, and I'll finish up with an overtime right now. While we were gone for spring break, what was the biggest thing that happened in the world of sports? Was it the numerous upsets that took place in both the men's and women's basketball tournaments thus far? Was it the fact that Jocelyn Alo, a player for the University of Oklahoma, set the national record for most home runs in her career and was able to do so in a game in her home state of Hawaii? No, I think we'd all say that probably the big story was when Tom Brady announced after retiring 2 months ago that he was going to come back, and he was welcomed with open arms by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Don't try that at home. If you retire, they will change the locks and take away your parking space before you leave the door. At least that's what I assume will happen here at KNW when I finally retire. Well, that will wrap up an overtime, and that will wrap up an episode of Sports Look. I'd like to thank my guest, Brandon Mizuraka from Greyhound Men's Soccer. I'd like to thank Cam Brennan, the acting sports information director. I had a floor crew led by Mr. Aiden. So for those aforementioned people, this is Doc Elder saying, so long.